ideas because like my brain has just completely forgot about everything that happened the day before, and like it's just left to creativity at this point. So sometimes I'll just put on headphones and I'll go to the keyboard and I'll start playing, and then I'll record the ideas.
It's very considerate of you, by the way, to put on headphones. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, you can still hear the keys clacking a little bit, but it doesn't bother my mom and my sister. But I'd say that ideas definitely just like pop into your head. If I try sitting down and coming up with an idea, I'm just like, where do I start? But I feel like I would need inspiration to not, because if I sit down and try to write a melody, I find that it starts sounding exactly or very similar to a piece that I've listened to before. Like, for example, Rachmaninoff. Like, I find that if I just try to sit down and play something original, then I'll just like come up with something that's already existed before. It just pops into your head usually.
Often in music school, and there is very little likelihood that you won't have some sort of post-secondary musical education, you'll find that assignments are given in which you're asked to write something in the style of Mozart, and while that's a little limiting, it happens a lot, and it is very valuable.
That's easier for me to be able to do.
But if you're coming up with original stuff, I don't see you being overly derivative or anything. You're writing what's in your heart, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just it would be much easier for me to come up with something in the style of a certain composer because, after listening to the music, you start noticing certain things like. Mozart will have what I like to call, in his concertos, a musical seatbelt, which is when say, for example, I'm playing a Mozart concerto, where the violin goes, there's a bum, 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 ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That, I'll find that almost always Mozart has this underlying rhythm that happens in the bass, or he'll have something like this, something like a trill or an ornament like that, which is also a little bit like Bach. Bach has these counterpoint things, he'll have a motif go on in the right hand, and then it'll be repeated and it'll be repeated in the left hand and have a different idea going on in the right hand, and then that idea is in the left hand.
We talked about this actually just last week, or maybe it was earlier this week, imitative counterpoint, sometimes where things are repeated verbatim in a round, sort of as a canon at the unison, or imitative counterpoint where permutations of things happen over and over, or interact at odd intervals and odd time, frames. So that's a valuable technique, but you don't have to learn them in a derivative way, is what I'm saying. You don't have to cop somebody else's style to learn them. So be wary of that, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it is a useful exercise and a very common one.
Mm-hmm. Dylan?
Aspirations to track it out, write it out.
Well, I've ordered him to.
Okay.
Because I can better analyze it if I can see it in score form.
Yeah, so I've started writing it out on paper, and it's a tedious task, but if I sit down and if I have time, 2 hours will fly by, and I'll have got a lot of stuff done. But also, I like to have a lot of attention to detail when I'm writing. For example, one time I spent 30 minutes on one measure with the whole orchestra because I needed to have this articulation. It needed to be like that. It has everything I'm a perfectionist in that way, but I'll know when I'm spending too much time on something that I gotta move on.
Yeah.
But I just really, like, I have an idea in my head, and I find that sometimes putting it on paper, it's a skill that I'm building, and
Definitely.
sometimes it's harder to come up with things when you're just writing on paper. It's easier for me when I sit down at the piano.
In the middle of the night and like think, oh, I should add this, or like this works. Do you think that kind of like created a clashing of like emotions and feelings because it's also like random at different times? It wasn't like following one certain like inspiration. It was kind
Yeah,
of
do your thoughts have continuity if you're interjecting something from a late night session, right?
Yeah.
Can you rephrase the question? I'm not sure I understand. What exactly you were asking?
Because you felt, I mean, it was obviously over a long period of time when you created that. Like, do you think that the kind of like the inspiration kind of changed over time, and like the ideas that you had kind of changed? And do you think that like was reflected in the music?
Oh, yeah, of course. Like, that question, yeah, that's a great question. Well, I'll find that I am still really inspired by Rachmaninoff. I've started thinking, like, in a more modern classical way, or, I don't know. I think it's reflective of how I change as a person, because, like, if I'm feeling a certain emotion over a period of time, like I'm having a really great week, I'm feeling great, then I'll be inspired by something triumphant or exciting or rewarding or resolved. And that's kind of what I was like when I was writing this. It's like everything is just like coming together in a beautiful way, and I think that it's definitely reflective of my inspirations at the time and how I'm inspired in different periods of time with different emotions. It's a great question, thank you.
I add on to what Judah was saying and
Yeah.
what you were saying. It's funny because I feel like my thoughts the middle of the night, like when I go to make music, are not cohesive. I'll come up with like half of one project, like an A section for one project, and then it'll be the middle of the night and I'll come up with something completely different.
But are you able to
I'm able to
organize them and pigeonhole them into the proper slots?
I'd have to start like I'll just like be like halfway through one and then start something else and then go
So-
back to that.
I do that too, and I would suggest that you create an archiving system so
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
don't lose ideas. I mean, you know that.
Yeah, title everything. Like I have like
Title everything, and also I find I'm much older now, and I notice that I'll create something, I'll say, yeah, I'll remember that, and I don't. I just don't.
Yeah.
You know, it's tragic.
Whenever I do that, I don't know why. Like, I have a feeling that I won't remember it, but then I actually end up I
Well,
do remember.
enjoy that.
I always remember the ideas that I come up with.
Yeah, good for you.
Or like, that's why I don't need to record every idea.
Yeah, it does depend. Sometimes the idea is like earth smashing, and there's no way you can forget it.
Or like when I came up with the I knew I wasn't gonna forget it, but I still had to get it on video so that I wouldn't forget it, because
Yeah.
that's a very important section.
Yep. And you guys have.
My movements of my piano concerto in one big folder on MuseScore. So I'm like, piano concerto number 1, opus 1, third movement. I'll just go right to that, and it'll be right there, and I'll be ready to work in a few seconds. And that's huge because I know where everything is, and I won't lose any work, because that would be very
Yes, I mean, imagine there was a time, we've talked about this before, pen, ink that you have to dip.
And I have very messy
And
handwriting. I've tried writing
paper.
on paper. I've tried writing on paper. It's horrible. I don't even, what note is that? I can't even,
Oh, that's me too though.
it's very hard to write on manuscript paper for me.
I have
It is.
not bad handwriting.
Well, and we've also talked about how it's not the most elegant and efficient system to begin with.
Yeah.
And the difference between one note and one step above is sometimes less than a millimeter, depending on the size paper you're using.
Like, I cannot read it. Is it writing in like Arabic or something?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Does anyone have any other questions, comments, concerns, possibly? Nothing?
Notice he didn't say criticism.
Well, you can give criticisms too.
I'm kidding.
No, actually, I want to know what I can work on from the audience.
No, I told you he's very resilient. I remember in the beginning he was playing. I'm thinking about writing a piano concerto. I'm like, and I'm kind of like, wow. I mean, that's a huge undertaking. Are you sure? Why not start small? Just write a piano piece, you know? And he's like, no, I think I want to write a piano concerto. And he started playing me stuff. And like almost, you remember this? Almost every sonority was a diminished chord. And so my criticism was, well, you never met a diminished chord you didn't like, you know, which was kind of mean, but it did spur him on to do what he's doing now.
No, and now I think about it, like that was actually horrible. Like if I think about it, like everything was just...
I don't know about horrible, but it was, I think what you needed to do was give yourself credit for being able to ascertain more interesting and varied sonorities.
I think that it changed when I stopped thinking about things in chords. Because when I was like, I'm going to do a melody around these chords, and then it would like, it's nothing without the melody. So I decided when I'm inspired, I'll just, I don't know, like when I get up in the middle of the night, I'm just like, I'm not going to think of chords, let me think of a melody, and I just come up with something.
No, this is that constant thing that we've been talking about in class about the difference between chunking things in chord form as opposed to treating every constituent note of a sonority as a voice, right? And the definition of that is counterpoint. And personally, I think that's the better way to go. I think it's indicative of more depth in compositional skill.
Well, I'm sure that like when after you told me that, I was like, instead of
You okay there?
chair broken. Instead of
It's
thinking
not perfect.
of things like instead of like I'm thinking of it in question and answer or different voices. So instead of just going, I have this. So it keeps it interesting in the voices with movement and for like question and answer. For example, it was like.
Remember, we have referred to question and answer as antecedent and consequent. Same thing.
Yeah, so.
All right, we are running out of time. Does anyone else have anything they want to add?
Nobody else has a question. What do you feel like was the most difficult part?
Of composing it?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
I can't think of one thing that's particularly stands out in difficulty for writing. Actually, maybe being able to play my own composition, because on paper I'm writing it in a much more complicated way. It sounds a lot cooler, and I don't have the technical capacity on piano to play it. So I just play the simplified version. So the hardest part is being able to keep up with my composition with my piano technique. So thank you all for listening. I really had a great time.
Well, thanks for coming,
We'll
Gabe.
see you next time on the Gabriel Show. Okay.